Kia ora, welcome to Under the Checkered Flag, MotoGP edition. I'm your host Kate, and we're just going to jump right in.
We are halfway through our summer break, and to absolutely no one's surprise, there is a slight bit of housekeeping we need to do straight off the bat, and that is the fact that the Kazakhstan Grand Prix has now officially been cancelled. It was postponed, now it's been cancelled to the surprise of absolutely nobody. The official wording was that it is still feeling the effects of their natural disaster, all their flooding, and they wouldn't be able to get the resources to get the facilities at the track there in time. It is being replaced by another round at Misano. They won't be back to back races, there's a week in between, and from what I understand, there's like this big cycling event on in between the races, so they are going to have to pack down the garages and pack up the bikes and not be able to leave them there, and then, put them all back together again a couple of weeks later. First of all, it wasn't a surprise for me, and I've got two questions for you guys. Was it a surprise for you? Did you actually think we'd get to Kazakhstan? And my second question is, do you think it will be on the calendar again next year?
I'm gonna be real. It was a mess, a total steaming pile of crap. It was everything was going wrong with it. I don't think since it was announced there was any positives of this Grand Prix. Like, it does look like a nice circuit, genuinely, but there was no good updates from it. It was always, oh, this happened, oh, that happened, we might not be ready. Oh, we'll replace it with India. Oh, no, wait, we're not going to India. We're going back to Kazakhstan. Oh, no, wait, sorry, we can't go here. We're going to Misano. It's just not happening. And I can see why the FIM would want it to be on the calendar, and I feel like they're going to do everything in their power to make sure it's on the calendar. But at the minute, I do not see it happening next year either. If it's this much, if it's just this much effort to get to it, why would you put yourself through that? Like, no. As much as I'd love to see it, it's just too messy for me to actually think it's going to happen.
Yeah, I'm not really surprised either. The main thing that I was just thinking is they've had so long to sort of plan it out and sort of figure out what's going to happen and get the event sorted. And in the end, it still hasn't looked like they've fully gotten to that stage yet. So yeah, future work needs to be done to sort of stop this from happening because the same sort of thing happened in Finland a few years back. I'm not really against replacing it with the second race in Mazzano. It just seems like it gets in the way of quite a few things. Obviously, the cycling event Kate mentioned, and I'm pretty sure they've put it on the same weekend as World Superbikes in the same country. So it almost probably would have been better to just cancel the race in general and do one less race this year. But it is what it is. We're not the ones that make the decisions, so.
My understanding on that is that they could not cancel it. The reason for that is because they've already cancelled Argentina, which was nobody at the FIM or Dorna's fault. That's probably the only one that's, not been predictable this year. It means that if they cancelled Kazakhstan for the second time again, we would be under 20 races. And my understanding is that the TV rights that they've sold are for a minimum of 20 races. So they would be putting themselves at like serious financial risk if they did cancel it. One thing I am a little bit surprised about, and I do want to get your take on, which is the standard Kate way of surprising a question. The reserve event that was put right at the start of the year of Hungary. No one's even talked about it in relation to Kazakhstan getting cancelled. Like, that was a reserve event for the reason. But that track isn't even ready. And I just want to get your guys' thoughts, if you have any, on why we aren't using or why we are announcing a reserve circuit and then not using it.
I don't think either of us do.
And this is why I normally prepare you guys beforehand, but I've actually just pulled my calendar off my wall, which I'm going to show a picture of my calendar up on screen because I print it out at the start of every year, and honestly, it's just a mess right now. And it just sprung into my mind. But yeah, I'm a little annoyed that this whole Kazakhstan situation has happened, and I hope they don't announce it on the calendar for next year because it's been cancelled for 3 times now, if we're including twice this year. And that's just really, really frustrating. One question I did ask you guys to prepare for is if you could choose one circuit to race at twice in a year, like we are doing now with Misano, which racetrack would it be?
Would I be basic for saying Phillip Island? It might be it might be a basic choice, but and you guys do live close to it, but it's a Grand Prix that I do enjoy when it happens. FIM. Please put it at a different time of year. That'd be really preferable. But I just love it. It's really hard to explain, but I'd love to see it happen twice a year. It I don't have a reason for it. It's just like, when you love something and you just want to do it more and more, but you don't have a reason. That's basically me for this. Pretty much. I can't explain it any better.
My first thought was also Phillip Island, just because it sees such incredible racing, and it is one of the more unpredictable circuits. But I wish there was a circuit that we could go to and we could just do it like in the reverse way. I don't think with how quick these bikes are, any track's like suitable for that. So instead, I've gone with the Thailand Grand Prix at the Chang International Circuit just because I honestly think that race is often underrated. We see really great racing there year after year, and it's just incredible. I probably would do it at separate ends of the calendar because we've got, I suppose, a bit of a risk with Misano, especially where they're doing it one weekend, then they've got a test, and then we're going back. So the amount of data they're going to have is going to be huge, and it's going to be a little bit predictable, I think. So I think, yeah, having them split out, one at one end of the season and the same track at the other end of the season, would probably help with that. But yeah, I've gone Thailand.
Yeah, there's a lot of tracks that I think would be really good to go to twice. And just based on what happened in 2020, 2021, where so many tracks were doing 2 races to sort of make up the numbers in the calendar, some of them, just off the top of my head, were Qatar, Jerez, uh, Austria did 2 races, Misano, Valencia as well. Some of those tracks I just personally really enjoyed, and I think put up 6 good races across all of the classes when they did have 2 races. But yeah, even one like Phillip Island I think would be really good just because we generally always see good racing there. Uh, it just depends whether they did want to do them back to back or if they could get them on separate ends of the calendar or whatever. But I feel like normally doing them sort of back to back or close enough is generally better because just normally the weather conditions are better, and obviously the tracks are used for different events throughout the year. But yeah, I think there's a number of good tracks that could be really well suited to do 2 races in a year.
And that is enough of us rambling about tracks, thanks to the cancellation of Kazakhstan. Now, I thought it would be really good being the mid year break for us to just go through the top 5 in each championship. So, Kelly, do you want to do the top 5 in the Moto 3 championship, starting with P5?
Okay, so starting from P5 in the Moto3 Championship, we have David Munoz. Bit of a shocker for me, weirdly enough. I know he is a good rider, but for me, it was a bit of a shock. Coming into P4, yeah, definitely a shock for me. We have Colin Byer, who did fall down after his crash at the Saxon Ring. Disgraceful behavior, really. I'm very upset. And then in third, we have Danny Holgado. How he's kept that, I don't know, because he has been a bit off form since after the start of the year, but he's been consistent enough to keep third, so I have to give him his credits. And then in second, we have Ivan Artola, a name I did not expect even in the top five coming into this year. So credit where credit is due. Good for him. And then number one, untouchable, we have David Alonso. I feel like he's going to lead us the whole way through. I have a feeling he is one of probably the most consistent rider in this championship at the minute. He's just absolutely on it. So number one, David Alonso.
Moving on to the Moto2 standings, it's generally a lot closer at the top than Moto3, but starting from 5th, we have the last of the speed ups, Boscoscuro chassis, Alonso Lopez on 93 points. Fermin Aldeguer hasn't had the start to the season that he would have wanted, but he's still in the fight on 108 points. Joe Roberts, with his recent injury, didn't lose too many points at the front, but he's still in the fight up the top with 123 points, and it's gotten a lot closer at the top between the Empty Helmets MSI teammates, with Ayagura in second on 140 points, and Sergio Garcia only 7 points ahead on 147. So it should be an interesting title fight for the rest of the year between those five.
And Moto2 isn't the only one that's kind of close. MotoGP. In P5, we have the only non-Ducati in the top five. Five? What an interesting way to say five. In Maverick Vinales, he's on 125 points. He is almost 100 points off the lead, so I'm not entirely sure I'd consider him in the championship fight. In P4, we've got Enea Bastianini on 155 points. P3, we have Marc Marquez on the Gresini year-old bike on 166 points. But sort of as expected coming into the start of the year, the championship fights between Jorge Martin on 212 points and Pecco Bagnaia on 222 points. Quite a surprising turn at the end after Martin crashed out in his most recent race. But yeah, I do want to come back to that in just a second, because what I thought we'd do is this will not count towards our prediction championship that we've got going on, but I thought we'd each give our take on who we think is going to win each class. Now we've got a bit more data and we've seen how the season's progressed, because right at the start of the season, I put Tony Arbolino to win Moto2, so that's a bit unfortunate for myself. So I think it's time we update it. Who wants to go first?
I have a few names in mind already, so this one. Uh, start with Moto 3. Obviously, I feel like you guys will completely agree with this, but it's so hard to look past David Alonso, just with how far along he is at the front, and with how fast he's looked at basically every track already this year. In Moto 2, I'm honestly thinking Ayagura probably has the best chance at the minute, just with Aldeguer a bit far back and Garcia hasn't really looked like he's been fighting it right at the front in the recent races, and obviously Garcia has so much more. Agura has so much more experience, and MotoGP, uh, same thing, sort of based on recent results. I'm thinking now it'll be Pecco Bagnaia. He's won the last 4 races, and with Martin moving to Pirelli at the end of the year, I don't think Ducati are really gonna want to give him the best chance they can at letting him win the title.
I think Moto3, who I want to be from Moto3 and who I think is going to win Moto3 are completely different. But I like them both. So for Moto3, I think, as Paul said, you can't really look past his performances. I do think David Alonso will win, however much I really want Colin Vire to win. So I just have both of them down. I'd be happy if either one of them win, but at the minute it's more likely that it will be Alonso, unfortunately. And then for Moto2, I'm kind of set in Ayagura or Sergio Garcia's, although Sergio Garcia has fallen off a little bit with his performances, but the Saxony never really was his favorite track. They never really were best friends. Uh, but Ayagura's performances have just been like sincerely up there. That man wants the championship, and I'm here to look to see it. And then MotoGP, I think everyone will agree, Pecco Bagnaia. I have had my eye on him since the start of the season, and he's just been so on it. He's won, as Paul said, the last 4 races, and Jorge Martin, even if he is moving to Aprilia, he just hasn't had the performances either. Like, as I said before, and I think in a past podcast, that man cannot handle pressure. Whenever he knows Pecco or one of the Aprilias or anyone's behind him, he just crashes. He can't handle the pressure, and I feel like that is not a trait a world champion will have. So my eye is still on Pecco Bagnaia.
I mean, Pecco last year and crashing out of the lead might disagree with that world championship assumption.
He can
However,
crash out of the lead all he wants. I'm just talking about consistent crashing out of the lead, which Jorge Martin seems to love.
he's done it
Crashing
twice.
out of races mostly. He's still a sprint merchant in his heart.
He is. And if we look at the stats, I think that does say quite a lot in the fact that, okay, so for context, Pecco has had 4 DNFs this year, and Martin has had 3 DNFs. The big difference is 3 of Pecco's have come in the sprint, where there's a lot less points on offer. 2 of Martin's have come in the race. And we know that Pecco's just so much more incredible. On Sundays, he's had 6 race wins, and Martin's only had 2. Whereas, yeah, the sprints, Martin is all over, but it's the race where the points come in.
Bagnaia's DNF in the race was also a collision with another rider, and I'm pretty sure Martin's have all been his own doing, so there's that part as well.
All I'm trying to say is Pecco obviously does crash out in his own accord as well, but Martin seems to crash when more is at stake, if that makes sense. Like, he's like completely solid. Like, if he's leading the whole way down and he has a considerable gap, he's fine. Like, he's completely fine. But then once a rider even comes close to the back of his bike, he's just gone. And I understand why you'd think that the same for Pecco as well. But some of that is from collisions with other riders, or he still has a considerable gap. It's just, I feel like Jorge struggles way more with pressure. Like, just judging by statistics, we can't say anything about the rider. Pecco could be way worse with that. But judging by statistics and looking at races, it just looks so much more like Jorge struggles. But that's just me. You could say the total opposite.
And we have to give it to Pecco for keeping that pressure on the most recent race. It was seriously one of his more impressive performances, I think. With the prediction, something happened that I was a little bit worried about, in the fact that we all completely agree. Because I've also gone Alonso, Agura, and Pecco. Pecco, I do think is going to win, and I agree with Poz that when Martin said that he was going to Aprilia, his chances went down. But I think the moment his chances disappeared was when Pramac said they were going to Yamaha, because while they don't want to share, they don't want Martin to take the number 1 plate to Aprilia, they sure as heck don't want those Pramac mechanics to take really important up-to-date information from Ducati straight to Yamaha. And so, yeah, I think his chances are pretty much gone. I think the person whose chances rapidly increased when that news came out is Marc Marquez. So I wouldn't be surprised if we start to see him getting some of the upgrades that are supposed to be for Martin. But only time will tell, I suppose. And one final bit of news, just to mention, is the fact that MLav Racing and Josh Whatley released a joint statement saying that they have parted ways. They said that MLav, or Michael Laverty, this is, said that the Moto3 class is more suited to smaller / lighter riders, and it's clear to see from the data that Josh is riding great. However, it's nigh on impossible to negate a power to weight disadvantage. He's simply outgrown the machine as he's matured, and he will be much more rewarded in a larger capacity class. We don't know where Whatley's going yet, and we also don't know who's replacing him, but as soon as we have that information, we'll be sure to discuss it on the podcast. That's it for us this week. We'll be back next Monday where we will be predicting the British Grand Prix. Have a wonderful week.